Okay. Hello again. We are getting close to the final of this conference, to the end of this conference. Sorry. um, and I think we can close our works with a great discussion in this round table with Professor Baum and Professor Joel Anderson, um, whom I absolutely thank for being here. They are our invited guests. And maybe to start this debate, I would leave just one or two comments or suggestions. I would say that at first, our ambition, our main aim, our aim with the call for this conference was to provoke wide debate on the relations between theater and photography, and also a comprehensive debate that included also performing arts, performance, and that I think led to a wide range of proposals that we received too. So it has been quite hard to evaluate and to try to make some sense with the in this program, taking so many interesting proposals that have been submitted. And actually, we received around 100 proposals, and we had to make a great selection. So, and we left apart probably some very good proposals and some very good talks also, but we had this hard task to make sense with the program. So we came to this point, we get to this point that we knew it was risky to this such a wide call, but we took it, and now we are at this point that we have to evaluate and see, has it worked or not? What are the main issues regarding so many different approaches to the relations between photography and performance and theater? For us, it would be nice to discuss probably this point. How can we deal with this so many this heterogeneity of reflections that arise from the relation between photography and theater and performance? And the second question probably could be, what can we do further in the future? What might be the future of this field of studies? In which direction shall we go? What can we do to keep working on these problematics? How can we arrange ourselves to in the scholars community to keep thinking and reflecting on this? I know that a lot of you have been following the conference. It has been quite intense. Also, thank you, Professor Baum and Professor Joel, for having been during all panels at attending this conference. And I also would invite someone that might want to participate in this debate, that has something to say, is already invited. But now I would leave the floor to this magnificent panel.
Is that right? Well, I think there is no format for this discussion. It's a round table, although the table is not round, as you may have noticed. And I think it's important, two things that have just been said. One is that I think this should be an opportunity for, if there are things you haven't said or conversations you'd like to have, I think we can facilitate that. I think we're in a paradoxical situation of needing to conclude, but wanting to continue. And I think we should also be thinking about the future, about where this can lead, where we can go from here. It's true, it's been an incredible, wide-ranging event. stretching from Rebecca all those days ago, it seems like a couple of weeks ago, but from Rebecca talking about the gesture, the traveling of the gesture, the movement across the interval, through the interval of the gesture, all the way to Castellucci, and thinking about how, well, Castellucci's question about what is an image effectively? How can an image be made? Can an image be staged? What happens when you stage an image? And it seems to me that across all of this event, the different papers have been waving to each other, like Rebecca described, and with all of the ambiguity of the wave, as Rebecca said, the wave that you receive may or may not be the wave that you send back. It travels, that much we know, but we don't know if it remains the same or if it only remains the same through being different. And I feel that that's happened across a lot of the presentations, that they're kind of waving to each other in different ways. And one of the ways that I think maybe we could all talk about is through certain keywords that have appeared. And like those waving gestures, I think sometimes they mean the same thing and sometimes they don't. I think sometimes the same word has different meanings. It allows a communication, it allows some kind of stretching across the interval, but it ends up signifying something else potentially. And I think that's a risk that the organizers, who I just meant to thank as well, thank you so much for this wonderful event and for the invitation. But I think that was inevitable when talking about photography and theatre, when talking about photography and performance and theatre, because it becomes a discussion about the tension between photography and theatre, the tension between photography and performance, the tension between theatre and performance. All of these things are far from resolved. These are live issues, although I'm glad that we didn't spend the conference arguing about, for example, what's the difference between performance and theatre. I think we would have. I think you're glad. Okay, because it happens. Trust me, it happens. But instead, I think seeking to wave to each other across these disciplines, across these media, if indeed media is what they are. And so thank you for that. And I have some other things I could say, but maybe we can open up first and yeah, jump in.
Since you yeah, testing. Yeah, since you said actually I know the answer to that question. What's the difference between theatre and performance? Because when I first, no, this is very relevant. It's a very relevant answer. And when I first started integrating performance art or examples into my teaching and theatre studies in the late 90s in Germany, I said to my students, the difference is very easy actually. If you go to a theatre, you will see a sign on the wall saying no photography. If you go to a piece of performance art, it won't start until the photographer is there. And this is the difference. Which means, what does that mean? Yeah, what does that mean? The one, in the case of theatre and photography, there seems to be indeed a relationship of tension, yeah? And uneasiness and incommensurability, perhaps. And in the early days of the research into theatre photography, you always came across this question of the theatre photograph never being commensurable with the original and the performance and so on. Whereas performance art, after its very, very early beginnings, seemed to develop very quickly almost a symbiotic relationship with the photographic medium. And this is something I think we saw very clearly in this conference, in fact, that this relationship has become even more complex and even more intertwined to the point sometimes you might even say you can't even tell them apart. You know, and there were some really interesting examples I felt in the presentations over the last 2 or 3 days where the one is unthinkable without the other. You know, whereas theatre and photography, you can usually separate them out. Whereas sometimes in the realm of performance, they are no longer separable. Yeah, they're not even thinkable without the one and the other. And so I think this tension, it was visible in this conference in the sense that there were actually very few presentations dealing directly with, say, the traditional field of theatre photography as a subfield of theatre iconography, usually with a sort of set of canonical examples from the 19th and early 20th century that was there, but it was very much a minority. So it seems to me that it may not be, in fact, if we're looking into the future, it may not be productive to try and keep folding them into one another. Yeah, it may be in terms of the fields, academic fields develop through differentiation. Yeah, because they build up a body of knowledge, a body of reference, and it seems it may be this conference may be an example of the fact that is yet has reached a point where theatre photography in its more traditional sense, or you know, as a field of iconographical study, has become sort of autonomous, yeah, and will continue in its own tracks. Whereas the much more complex, intertwined, messy relationship between performance and theatre will also perhaps develop in its own way, and may itself develop in subfields. Yeah, so we may be witnessing, in a sense, a point of departure. Yeah, we're looking into the future. It may not be any point in the future of trying to keep folding these two fields into one another.
Say something very, very important because I didn't introduce Professor Maria João Brilhante. It's so familiar to me that I almost forgot. But I would like just to stress and point out the idea that Professor Maria João Brilhante is actually the person responsible for the introducing of the theater iconography studies within the Center for Theater Studies in Lisbon. So I think it's a very important point to start discussing these topics, and in the time that 15 years ago or more. And I think that, of course, taking that in consideration, yeah.
Well, maybe I'll say a few things, but you see that they are a little bit aside. Well, I wrote because when I start talking, well, first in English, and when I start talking, nobody stops me, and so it's yeah, I'm always thinking that I'm in a classroom or something like that. So I'm going to read a little bit what I wrote. It's quite fragmentary and maybe disconnected, but it's a starting point if we want to continue to discuss. So when considering the topic proposed for this closing roundtable, I felt that it would not be prudent for me to speak about future perspectives or on photography and performance. And I remembered the sentence pronounced by Fernando Pessoa, our known poet, according to the myth, while he was dying: "I know not what tomorrow will bring." As well as the answer of Pierre Francastel, the French art historian, when asked about what could he project about future theatre venues architecture, that he answered that it should be searched in the imagination of the present. Following their advice and sticking to the present, I recognize a common interest both in photography and in performance to deal with issues like presence and absence, mixed reality and performativity, among others, obviously. And I think they were present here along this conference. As a brief forward, I'd like to say that the different uses of photographs and photography in the realm of performance should be part of any discussion concerned with the presence, the power to affect, and the creative production of real. To advertise, to document, to be part of the creative process, to exist alongside the performance, are a few of the configurations produced nowadays. They ask for different approaches and are obviously the source of diverse experiences. Presence and absence engage photographers, performers, as well as observers in a playful action of interpretation, most of the time with different phases and gestures, from material recognition to the production of sensible responses and eventually meanings. In this process, our shared conceptions of real, fiction, truth, visible and invisible are challenged by the imaginative capacity of creating strangeness and pleasure altogether. Both photograph and performance seem to become real from this coalition of what is there, the presence and the representation, and what is not there, but may have been there. We can talk about indicia left in the process of their creation, susceptible of being activated by the observer. But something I find also stimulating is the fact that erasing, cutting, dismissing are part of the presence-absence movement process or game. Or even more exciting, the manifestation of strange elements whose functionality in a possible narrative is precarious. This probably means that we can talk of presence, effects, and affects, as some presentations during the Congress emphasized, in a photograph or a performance beyond their real existence. In that case, the appearance of the absent, more than the revisitation of the Benjaminian aura, is a manifestation of nostalgia and lackness that we, observers, try to overcome through composition, feeling, and sometimes narrative. Of course, these are general considerations that should be crossed with cautious necessity of distinguishing the production-reception conditions of each photograph or performance and the fact that they exist in a never-ending combination of actions, gestures, models, quotations, techniques, discourses, remediations, where presentation, presence, and effects of presence come together for the sake of reality and imagination. And I come back to Franck Castel. Thank you. It's just to start the discussion. Let's hear.
I'm going to try and contradict myself because I basically said that the theater and performance, or the photography of theater and performance, and the performance photography should go their separate ways, right? That was my suggestion. I'm not sure how many people would agree with that. If we look at just the number of papers in the conference, then I'm probably right. Yeah, they're so. You told me you had over 100 proposals and you selected about 35 or 36. Yeah, so which is amazing. Yeah, that it just shows you how interesting and productive the field is. I mean, that's a wonderful testimony to the call, to the idea, to the research that's going on. I think that's really phenomenal. It would be interesting then to do a breakdown of how many of those papers then addressed theater photography, the relationship between photography and theater, and how many addressed what we call performance art. Yeah, that would be another interesting breakdown. I would suspect it's 10%.
Maybe more.
Yeah, 15%. Yeah, 15%. I mean, it's not because of the call. The call is, I mean, I think it's a fantastic formulation, archive, body, medium. I think those are the big topics, yeah? And that's, in a sense, they should bring these two somewhat incommensurable fields together, actually, yeah? We heard a paper today on Ada Isaacs Mencken. And then everything was there, yeah? We have the body, we have the eroticized body, we have technology, we have a technology which is then trying to find a new market. Yeah, so there are lots of topics, and that's sort of old theater photography. But of course, when I was experimenting, was really new. Yeah, that was cutting edge technology. When Saroni did those photos, yeah, he was creating something new, and it seems so. I think that this relationship, if we look at that relationship, I think we sort of need to look back, if you like, from all this really interesting work that's going on at the moment in what we would call performance photography, and then look back through those spectacles and say, oh, well, this is actually, what's actually been happening in theater. Because some people say, yeah, well, theater photography only starts in the 1840s, before it's irrelevant. But of course, it's just a continuation of a much older relationship, and that's between the theater and the image, which, as we know, goes back as far back as the hand on the cave wall. Yeah. Some of those Paleolithic images, especially the ones from Australia and Africa, are very clearly part of a ritual performances. Yeah, they're very clearly part of that. Yeah, that there is some kind of performance aspect to those images. So we're actually looking at a very, very, very complex, interconnected, almost an anthropological relationship. So I'm saying I'm making a proposal, and I'm contradicting myself at the same time, in the hope that this may generate some kind of discussion about these questions.
There's a couple of hands.
Manuel?
There is something very returning, this never-ending combination of the presence and the recorded, this idea of changing, holding photography performance. So it really feels there is attraction, repulsion. I mentioned the other day. There is this energetic forces, yeah, which are incredibly vital. And I think what would be very interesting for me is to think or discuss or question what these forces are propelled from. So what is the aim of these forces? What are the intentions? And of course, it's kind of a question that I now do regularly, especially to artists, and it's been very interested to listen. Some of the artists, which was very good at the combination. And I remember Richard saying, I do this because it's kind of a therapeutic or searching the unknown, and so there is that, or Heidi, a confrontation with the Buller, or so there is something that, but in general, I have the feeling or a fear that this kind of momentum, it becomes a little bit away from the original intention, and we can caught into just a production mode. And I'm wondering if maybe us as a researcher, us as scholars, us as artists, should gather a little bit of focus on where we want to go by placing an intention into the work. I was saying something about preservation the other day, something that we can all agree together into an intentionality towards the work. Don't know if I...
I just want to come back to the selection and the percentage of the theater and performance, because it's a very interesting question, and maybe we didn't thought exactly about this percentage. But I think that maybe unconsciously we choose more on the side of performance than in theater, maybe because the question related to theater photography were already approached in other situation, other books, other conference already. Maybe there was I say it unconsciously passed through to performance, but the question of theater photography are central, evidently, and about this, I think that there is a contribution of Professor De Marinis, who we have discussed about this, and maybe he will take the word and say something. I think that it will be translated because he's not speaking English, but he can speak in French. But I will really like to.
French is a compromise.
Okay, I would really like to have his testimony to. 10 minutes, c'est un peu trop, mais c'est. Tá bem. Ouais. Ok. Si. Oui.
Alors, merci. Je suis ici, je suis un visiteur, disons, en cachette, ici pour des raisons privées. Mais en tout cas, j'ai suivi un peu ces 3 journées. Je trouvais très intéressant, même si, en tant qu'historien du théâtre, disons, pour des raisons égoïstiques, professionnellement parlant, j'aurais aimé le plus qu'on approfondit, et je pense qu'on a posé déjà le problème, la relation entre la photographie et les performing arts. Tandis qu'on a légitimement choisi notre vie, notre direction, qui est celle plutôt de parler de la photographie et du photographier comme une performance. Hein? En tant que tel, c'est un acte performatif, une performance. Donc, c'est une autre direction, également légitime, mais en tant qu'historien du théâtre, je suis plutôt intéressé à comment la photographie peut être un moyen de communication et de récréation, si vous voulez aussi, du fait théâtral. Ceci dit, j'ai trouvé beaucoup de choses intéressantes et je peux faire une élencation rapide. Alors, par exemple, dans la relation de Sylvia May, je trouvais intéressant la question qui ne regarde pas seulement Eleonora Duse, mais la question de comment rendre, par les moyens de la photographie, une manière de jouer qui nie le jeu, c'est-à-dire un jeu qui est aussi un non-jeu. Dans le cas de Duse, c'est-à-dire un jeu qui est fait surtout avec la soustraction plutôt qu'en ajoutant. Hein? Par exemple, en commençant à soustraire le corps même du performeur, de l'acteur, comme c'est dans le cas de Duse. Ça revient beaucoup souvent dans le XXe siècle. Je parle d'acteurs excellents italiens comme Carlo Cecchi, comme Leo de Berardinis, comme Carmelo Bene, qui ont détruit toutes les règles et les conventions de jouer sur scène. Et donc, c'était intéressant, photographe, de se mesurer avec cette défi. C'était la manière de jouer, par exemple, de Carlo Cecchi, si vous connaissez cet acteur superbe, ou de Leo de Berardinis. Le deuxième point intéressant, c'est, on l'a traité juste dans la dernière session, la photographie ou les vidéos, ou le film, parce que pour moi, il n'y a pas de différence d'un certain point de vue, peuvent être un moyen expressif à disposition du metteur en scène, ou plutôt des sources d'inspiration. Dans le cas de Castellucci, on a les deux. Dans le cas de Castellucci, ce n'est pas tellement important de parler de la photographie comme un matériel scénique, mais c'est plutôt de analyser l'imaginaire de Castellucci, qui est profondément imprégné par les images, par la photographie, par le film, par exemple, en particulier, non? Matthew Barney plutôt que David Lynch, etc. Donc, c'est un imaginaire profondément nourri d'images et de filmiques et photographiques, celui de Romeo. Mais j'ai trouvé particulièrement intéressant l'intervention de Simone Dragone parce qu'il pose, il analyse un cas particulier, c'est-à-dire le cas où, avec la photographie ou la vidéo, on essaye de créer une dimension intermédiaire entre la présence en chair et eau et la présence reproduite. C'est-à-dire ce qu'on pourrait appeler la présence simulée, ou une simulation de présence. Comme par exemple avec les images et la vidéo, Roberta Carreri, dans son spectacle hommage à son mari décédé, le grand acteur de l'Odine Torger Vettel, a essayé avec l'aide d'un videomaker, di Buduo, je ne me souviens pas le nom, a essayé d'évoquer de quelque manière la présence de Torger. Donc, ce n'est pas Torger reproduit, mais c'est Torger de quelque manière présent, avec lequel Roberta, pendant le spectacle, dialogue, parle, comme s'il était vraiment présent. Un autre point, et ça serait très long, mais pourquoi les artistes de théâtre se sont méfiés et encore se méfient, sont toutes faites de la photographie et de la vidéo, c'est-à-dire de toute forme de reproduction technique. Mais c'est très simple, parce qu'il se méfie que quelqu'un peut voler et figer et donc trahir leur travail sans les connaissant en profondeur. C'est très simple. Il y a toute une anecdotique là-dessus, qu'on arrive presque à la légende. Alors, Grotowski, le grand metteur en scène polonais, détestait les vidéos, détestait les photographes qui venaient reproduire le spectacle. Alors, eh bien, nous avons un des plus grands documents vidéo du XXe siècle, que c'est un super film sur le prince Constant. Comme ça est arrivé d'une manière très aventureuse. On a volé la vidéo, on a percé le mur d'un théâtre en Scandinavie et on a filmé le spectacle sans que Grotowski le savait. Mais ce film n'avait pas le sonore. Alors, quelques années après, Ferruccio Marotti, lors du festival de Spoleto, va avec son instrument et en cachette, il vole le sonore du spectacle. Et après, pendant un travail très long à l'Université de Rome à La Sapienza, on a superposé le sonore sur les images. C'est deux représentations différentes, superposées, et ça a produit ce film qui est un des plus grands documents filmés du XXe siècle. Donc, le problème, c'est à quelles conditions le metteur en scène se fait confiance dans l'artiste. Il faut renverser la question. Et les conditions sont évidemment que le photographe connaisse le travail, soit vraiment entré dans le monde, dans les groupes théâtraux, dans la compagnie. Et c'est pour ça que tous les grands metteurs en scène ont eu des photographes de confiance. Par exemple, Eugenio Barba, pour des décennies, a utilisé Tony D'Urso, un photographe qui vraiment vivait avec la compagnie, la suivait dans toutes les tournées dans le monde. Donc, c'était quelqu'un de très, très dedans à ce théâtre qu'il photographiait. Non? Donc, pas là. Et alors, je viens à l'autre suggestion qui m'a donné la relation de Novaga, qui disait dépassons le paradigme du chasseur pour parler du danseur du photographe comme un danseur. Et ça, c'est très intéressant. Mais je vais, pour conclure, dire quelque chose sur ça. Mais je propose entre chasseur et danseur le photographe comme anthropologue, ou du moins le photographe de théâtre. Parce que le travail que le photographe de théâtre fait, c'est doit être un véritable travail de terrain, comme l'anthropologue. Et ce n'est pas pour hasard que sont parfois les ethnographes qui ont produit les meilleurs résultats du point de vue de la photographie et de la vidéo. Je parle de Jean Rouch, que vous connaissez c'est le maître du film ethnographique. Eh bien, selon moi, le maître fou, c'est un véritable modèle pour les films de théâtre, c'est-à-dire comment on devrait tourner un film par rapport à une réalité théâtrale. C'est comme l'a fait Jean Rouch en Afrique en filmant le rituel de Maître Fous. Et pour terminer avec Ariane, où est-elle? Voilà. Alors, c'est séduisante l'image du photographe comme danseur. Mais il faut ajouter une chose. Il n'est pas un danseur soliste. C'est-à-dire, le photographe ne danse pas lui seul. Il danse avec, c'est-à-dire il danse avec l'objet, le sujet de sa photographie. Pour moi, qui m'intéresse d'acteur, de théâtre, il danse avec l'acteur. Il doit danser avec l'acteur. Donc, c'est ça qu'il faut analyser, hein, plutôt que penser disons, faire la liste des mouvements, de la gestuelle en général du photographe, de voir qu'est-ce que signifie pour le photographe de théâtre danser avec le spectacle, danser avec l'acteur. Et je termine. Aussi, le spectateur danse avec le spectacle. Aussi, le spectateur danse avec l'acteur. Et donc, ça que veut dire, le spectateur le fait sans bouger de son siège. Ça veut dire que ce n'est pas tellement intéressant de voir les gestes que le photographe accomplit, mais donc la manière beaucoup plus subtile avec laquelle il entre en sympathie, en complicité avec le spectacle. Et la théorie des neurones miroirs, on a démontré qu'il ne faut pas bouger, parce qu'on bouge dans le corps. Ce n'est pas le corps qui bouge, mais on bouge dans le corps. Hein? Comme on dit, la simulation incarnée. Nous tous le savons. Nous reproduisons les mouvements que voyons dans nous-mêmes. Et ça nous pose en relation profonde avec l'acteur, avec le performeur. Hein? C'est ça. Là. Et les miroirs, la théorie des miroirs, des neurones miroirs l'a démontré, mais on le savait depuis Aristote, je pense, qu'il existe l'empathie musculaire, existe ce qu'on appelait la synesthésie, non? La sensation de mouvement, qui, c'est le performeur à éprouver lui en premier lieu, mais après, c'est le spectateur lui aussi qui l'éprouve. Et aussi le photographe, je pense. Merci.
I think we are about to close or
No.
Yeah, not. Perhaps there are other persons who.
I just want to make a point about what Professor Marina said, that Grotowski detested photography, yeah, and video. You said, he detested photography. I'd like to do a little test with everybody. Close your eyes and think of Grotowski, and what do you see? I suspect many of you, if you will see Richard Chislak as the Constant Prince. Yeah, which is theatre photography.
It's a film still.
So
I think.
yeah, well, the book it's
the one that's reproduced,
It's the
yeah,
one
yeah.
that's on the
Yeah,
cover.
yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely.
it doesn't matter. It's a photographic image, and we
Yeah.
remember Grotowski
Agree.
through a photographic image, even if the master detested photography. That's how we remember, as we memorialize theatre. It's so iconic. Yeah. Anyway,
Some more questions
No.
from the,
I think everybody's tired.
yeah.
I think everybody's tired. I'm willing to propose something a little photographic to close, without any promises about it being useful. I've just essentially at random underlined a few things from my notes, and I've got notes on every single presentation. It turns out I just counted them and checked. And I was going to read out some of the phrases I've just underlined a bit at random to give a kind of snapshot of the conference. I thought to end. Does that seem
Great.
reasonable? And then we can, then you can go
Great.
home. All right. It's chaotic. I can't read all of my notes. Some of them are on the computer and some are in the notebook. So I'll try and do as many as I can reach. We end up, when we research performance photography, engaging with discourses, texts, and people. Ephemeral monument documents, catch attitudes, opt for poses. In many cases, iconography is petty objects, nothings. Chaplin plays on the mechanical capturing of film, breaks the machine, imitates the machine. It's like modern times. Gestures of clinging, is it a gesture? Seeing a photo where you take it and vice versa, what happens? If a photo is screaming at us, what if it's screaming at us? Performance of photography is a great marriage. What if you stand inside the camera? Not a hunt for an image, but a search for imperfection. Museology, is this a word in English? It should be. Who is represented? Be yourself, be being yourself. Returns as same. Self-photography, 2 exposures, 2 times. Series, sequences, and posing. Rehearsal of photography. How many times? Freeze frames reveal, movement hides. Movement reveals, freeze frames hide. Don't forget about photographicality. Photographs are just paper. Posters, promotional material, leaflets, documents, tickets. The impact of each document, the impact of each photo on the play, the impact on the company, never goes away and keeps coming back, is always coming and just left. Cabinet cards, revolving stages, static body, used for training. Choreographing yourself, choreographing. Closed nudity, doubling and repetition. Balancing, just balancing, no script. Simple repertoire, a repertoire of gestures. Posing, posing and gestures. Photos are a tool. Performance, the only place left where you can't use your phone. Attention and perception, Barthes. The image, can you stage an image? Can you create an image? If you can you photograph that image? Thank you.
And I'd like to take this opportunity to express many, many words of thanks to our 2 organizers. Felipe Cosimo has done a fantastic job, fantastic curatorial job, bring this together. It's really quite an achievement. And I think this conference may really go down in history. I really think it's got potential to set something going. And of course, I'd also like to take this opportunity to thank all the people behind the scenes, who've been working and feeding us and keeping us in such a good, positive frame of mind. Thank you very, 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 very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I guess now we'll say some words just to close properly before going for the exhibitions.
We have an exhibition. Yeah, 2 exhibitions.
Yeah. Yes.
No.
Not only. Okay. Okay. Okay, okay. Go ahead.
But it's just to say, just to, oh. Okay, okay, okay. Just, just to, just to, just to thanks you very much for this 3 days of really exciting presentation, debates. And I really, I just want to repeat what I said at the beginning about the risk that we take to open so widely the thing, the field. That was really risky, as already said, and maybe in these 3 days, sometimes disorienting. I think that's yeah, there was someone who was expecting more on theatrical things, other in performance, other we just had the impression that was not so much photographic, and then we received a feedback that it was too photographic. It's something that is very disorienting, and I think that this was the goal, in fact, to open, to connect people, to create links, because we think that the questions coming from this relation between photography and performing arts are the same, probably not in the same words, not using the same word, or using the same word to say different things. But I think that there are something very a substance, deep substance that we have to develop, and that we think that we really had to the opportunity to feel in this conference. So I think that's what we don't have talked during the roundtable was the perspective. I think that there are a lot of work to do, but there are a field of study with really an interesting and a vitality of research, and I hope, we really hope that this was an occasion to create connection, to create a network, to create sort of community, and we will stay in touch in some way. We will stay in touch with some other initiatives, some other we are now planning, and we are now starting to plan what will be next. Probably a publication. We're trying to see how old materials that came out from this conference could be found results, and the network is fundamentally. I think this is very interesting to have created a network of people, to have discussed. And so I was really silent during quite all the conference, but I really want to thank you and about the energy that was in the conference. Thank you. If you.
Yes, I have to say something also.
Thanks.
I'd like to thank everyone that participated in this conference. Of course, it has been a pleasure for us. But also I have to thank again the National Museum of Theatre and Dance to host this event here today. I think it has been a good day here today after those 2 days in University of Lisbon, and also hot days, very hot days with very hot conditions also. And I think it was a pièce de résistance, staying there for such a long time inside that room. I also would like to thank Culturgest Foundation for hosting the opening session by Rebecca Schneider. I'd like to thank FLAD Foundation, and also mention the advisory board that made possible also to put this the call for this conference in such a good way of being received. I'm convinced of that, and I would mention Maria Inés Aliverti, Joel Anderson here with us, Christopher Baum also, David Bate, that is not possible, it's not here because he's having his conference in Austin, Texas by now, Maria João Monteiro Brilhante, Cosim Chiarelli, of course, and sorry, I'm just reading, and Cláudia Madeira, Margarida Medeiros, José Quaresma, Vítor dos Reis, Arnaud Rickner, and Valentina Valentini. So these are the advisory board to whom I would like to make a special thank. I have to make a very, very special thank to our guest speakers, Rebecca Schneider and Amelia Jones. Unfortunately, Rebecca Schneider is not here, is not able to stay here with us, as you all know. We hope that she get better soon, and also Amelia, that she recover from his intervention. I would like to also thank the chairs of the 11 panels that made possible to make the works proceed, and the invited speakers, of course, Professor Baum, Professor Anderson, and I have a special thank to the team that helped us make this everything make it happen. Raquel Raimundo, Mariana Pancada, Ricardo Fangueiro, Paulo Batista, and Tatiana Ribeiro, from the secretary from the Center for Theatre Studies, that has played a very, very, very important role to make this happen. Absolutely. And I think I'm not forgiving leaving no one apart, you know. Okay, so that said, I'd like just to say that we are now going to the first floor to open the one of the exhibitions. The one on the right here is an exhibition around the photographic work by Pedro Soares, a Portuguese photographer. I will talk a little bit more about that on the place, and then we'll go to the outside and to open the second exhibition, Susana Chicot, Ex-Hack. I guess that you have already saw the images, but still, it's another opportunity to go to meet outside and have a drink and did something. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you very much for everybody.